In the dead of night, when the world seemed to hold its breath, the Sullivan family's quiet suburban home stood cloaked in shadow. The clock read 3:03 a.m., and the air was thick with the kind of silence that amplifies every creak, every whisper of wind against the windows. Mark Sullivan, a retired Marine with scars etched from battles long past, slept soundly beside his wife, Emily, his arm instinctively draped over her. Down the hall, their 12-year-old son, Ethan, lay awake, his face bathed in the faint blue glow of his phone. He knew he should have been asleep. School loomed in just a few hours, but the endless scroll of VY Deos kept him tethered to the waking world. Outside, the trees swayed gently. Inside, every breath felt magnified, every sound a pulse in the dark. Then, in an instant, the world exploded. A violent crash tore through the house as the front door splintered under a brutal force, the frame buckling like brittle bone. Ethan's phone slipped from his hands, hitting the carpet with a muffled thud. His heart slammed against his ribs, a war drum in his chest. Before he could process the chaos, a voice harsh, commanding, unsteady cut through the darkness. "Police! Stay where you are!" But Mark's instincts, sharpened by years in combat zones, screamed otherwise. No real officer would kick down a door without warning, without a knock, without a badge. This was wrong, deeply, surely wrong. He sat up, pulling Emily close, his voice a sharp whisper. "Stay down." His mind raced through every drill he'd run with his family, every scenario he'd prepared for. This wasn't a random break-in. It was calculated, reckless, and dripping with malice. In his room, Ethan's breath caught, his pulse a deafening roar. He remembered his father's lessons, etched into him through countless talks. Saw, if I'm not there, you protect this family. Saw under his bed, within arm's reach, was a .22 rifle, legally registered in Mark's name, a training weapon, light but lethal enough to send a message. Ethan wasn't a soldier. He was a kid who loved soccer, comic books, and his dog. But tonight those things faded. Heavy boots stomped through the levying room, drawers were yanked open, furniture shoved aside. Fear urged him to hide, but his father's voice in his mind was louder. Saw, family first. You protect your own. Saw, trembling, Ethan reached for the rifle. His fingers brushed the cool metal, and a strange calm settled over him, like the moment before a penalty kick when the world narrows to a single point. This wasn't a game. Missing wasn't an option. He slid off the bed, every move deliberate, every sound swallowed. His senses sharpened, his breathing steadied. The boy he'd been an hour ago was gone, replaced by someone who understood the world wasn't safe, not even here, in the home he'd always known. The footsteps grew louder, rough voices barking orders with a thrill that made Ethan's skin crawl. He crept to his doorway, staying in the shadows, the rifle's barrel pointed down, his finger near the trigger guard, just as Mark had taught him. There was no time to wonder who these men were, why they'd chosen this house, this night. There was only the certainty that if he didn't act, he'd lose everything. 4 men stormed through the shattered doorway, clad in black t-shirts emblazoned with HOA security. Balaclavas hid their faces, vying only their eyes and sneering mouths visible in the dim light. They moved with the confidence of predators, fast and ruthless, as if they'd done this before. Leading them was a towering figure, broad-shouldered, with a wild beard and eyes that gleamed with cold calculation. He gripped a fake police baton, tapping it against his leg in a rhythm that felt like a countdown to violence. Mark stepped into a hallway, placing himself between the intruders and Emily, his voice steady and commanding despite his sleep-rumpled clothes. "In the name of the law, show me a warrant!" The bearded man laughed, a harsh, guttural sound that sent a chill down Ethan's spine. "A warrant?" he sneered, stepping closer, the baton swinging lazily. "Your HOA dues are late, pal. We run this show now." The words were absurd, almost laughable, but the menace behind them was real. HOA dues? That was their excuse for shattering a family's peace at 3 a.m.? Mark didn't flinch, but his jaw tightened. He'd seen lawlessness in war zones, but never in his own levying room, in this quiet town. The intruders fanned out, tearing through the house like wolves. One ransacked the kitchen, scattering silverware across the floor. Another overturned chairs, ripped open closets, shouting demands for valuables. A family photo. Ethan grinning at a soccer game, his cleats muddy fell from the mantel, the glass shattering. In the shadows, Ethan watched, his hands tightening on the rifle, his knuckles white. He saw one of the men grab Emily's arm, yanking her so hard she stumbled. She tried to pull away, but the man's grip tightened, his voice a snarl. Something inside Ethan snapped. Fear burned away, replaced by a molten fury. These weren't officers. They were predators, and they'd crossed a line. Mark was still trying to de-escalate, his voice calm but his eyes darting, measuring the threat. He was a fighter, but he knew the risk of provoking armed men in close quarters. He needed time, a miracle. Unseen, Ethan decided he'd be that miracle not because he wanted to, but because he had to. He shifted his stance, shoulders squared, feet braced, the rifle steady. His heart thundered, but his hands were sure. The world narrowed to one truth: protect Mom, protect Dad, protect home. The intruders rampaged on, laughing cruelly, grabbing what they could. One pocketed Emily's wedding ring from a dish by the sink. Another kicked over a clay pot Ethan had made in 3rd grade, the shards scattering like broken promises. Ethan's blood burned. His finger brushed the trigger guard, his aim adjusting with a precision he didn't know he had. He didn't think about the consequences, only the need to stop them. The bearded leader shoved Mark hard, sending him stumbling against the wall. That was the final straw. Ethan inhaled, centered the sights, and squeezed the trigger. Saw crack. Saw the first shot rang out, striking the man holding Emily in the leg. He screamed, collapsing, his grip on her gone. Saw crack. Saw the second shot graze the leader's head, slamming into the wall, sending drywall dust raining down. For a heartbeat, the house froze. Then chaos erupted. Emily screamed, her voice piercing the air. Mark, gasping, pushed himself up, his instincts flaring. The intruders, once so smug, scrambled like cornered animals. The wounded man dragged himself toward cover, clutching his leg. The leader barked frantic orders, his voice cracking with fear. Ethan didn't lower the rifle. His arms shook, but his aim held true. He wasn't just a boy anymore, was the last line of defense. One intruder dove behind the couch, knocking over a lamp. Another fumbled at the back door, desperate to escape. Ethan's mind was clear: hold the line. The leader glared at him from behind a toppled table, their eyes locking. In that moment, the criminal saw his mistake. They'd underestimated this family. Ethan braced himself, ready for anything. Mark saw his chance. As the intruders hesitated, he surged forward, ripping the baton from a wiry man's hand and swinging it with brutal force. The blow landed with a sickening thud, dropping the man instantly, blood speckling the carpet. The remaining intruders stumbled toward the broken door, their bravado shattered. But the leader spun back, a pistol gleaming in his hand. Mark's voice roared, raw and unyielding. "Don't you dare touch my son!" Time slowed. Ethan saw the weapon, his mind calm, his training taking over. He shifted his aim, his face a mask of focus. Saw crack. Saw the shot was true, knocking the pistol from the leader's hand. He howled, clutching his wrist, his arrogance reduced to a scream. The intruders fled, tripping over debris, their retreat a chaotic scramble. The SUV's engine roared outside, tires screeching as they vanished into the night. The Sullivan home lay in ruins, furniture overturned, glass scattered, the door hanging broken. But in the heavy silence, there was V.Y. Torrey. Mark and Ethan stood side by side, unbroken. Emily, trembling, called 911, her voice steadying as help was promised. When police arrived, Mark laid out every detail, the porch camera footage sealing the truth. Officer Daniel Hayes, a veteran investigator, reviewed the scene and nodded. Pure self-defense. These fake HOA scammers have been terrorizing the county. You've given us what we need to end them. Within days, the story exploded. News outlets ran headlines. Saw family fights off fake HOA invaders in heroic stand. Saw Ethan became a symbol of courage, though he shunned the spotlight. In court, the EVY Denke was undeniable footage, testimonies, bloodstains. The judge's voice was steel. You terrorized a family under false authority. You'll pay dearly. Heavy sentences were handed down, a message that justice wouldn't falter. For the Sullivans, it wasn't about vengeance but resilience. On their porch, under a starlit sky, Mark and Ethan sat in silence, a bond forged in fire. Dad, are you proud of me? Ethan whispered. Mark's hand gripped his shoulder, his voice thick. Ethan, you became a man that night not because you fought, but because you knew why. I'm prouder than you'll ever know. Under the stars, Ethan sat taller, the weight of his choice settling like armor. The storm had passed, but the Sullivans stood stronger, their light unbroken in the darkness.